Um, let's get started right away with trying to kind of set some intentional motivation with our body and our physical posture. So as we've been doing recently before we get started with the teaching, we try to set kind of a physical intention coupled with a mental intention, and it kind of can help to center us and bring us to a place where we're getting ready to do Dharma practice. And it's also advised within the text. So it's the 7-point Vairakana posture. If you would like to get into this posture, it's the following points. Your legs in the cross-legged posture, ideally lotus position or half lotus, as we've said, or regular cross-legged, or just on the floor is fine. Obviously, later on, it will become necessary to be able to get into a full Vajra, full lotus posture. But in the beginning, if it becomes kind of a hindrance and the pain and so forth becomes more of the meditation, it's really not of benefit. So, I've heard so many meditation masters say that, we can develop these physical postures, but the first thing we really need to do is work on our mind, but recognize the importance of these physical postures later in aligning our channels and so forth. So we begin with the legs, and then the second part of the posture is making our back in a very, very straight fashion. They say like a stack of coins, we would like our spine to be kind of stacked up. And then our hands kind of on our lap, sitting on our crossed legs with our right on top of our left with our thumbs touching. And this represents the union of method and wisdom. So we have our hands and our legs and our back very straight. We don't want the back arched. We want the back straight, like a stack of coins. A stack of coins isn't arched. It's very, very straight up and down. And get our shoulders into a comfortable posture that allows our arms to bow out slightly, but so that we're not holding them up, or it's just in a comfortable posture. And then slightly bend your head forward, just slightly, but not in an uncomfortable manner like this. But you don't, want to have it, so that it's arching your back. So you're really bending at the neck, your head just slightly forward, just a little tiny bit. And then have the eyes squinting and looking kind of at the tip of the nose. You don't want the eyes too open. You don't want the eyes too closed. If they're too open, it brings on excitement, which is an obstacle to calm abiding. If they're too closed, it brings on dullness or lethargy, which is an obstacle to calm abiding. So we're trying to land somewhere in the middle there, which is clarity and focus. So we leave our eyes slightly open, focused at our nose, and then our mouth kind of in a comfortable fashion, with our tongue on the top of the roof of our mouth, touching the back of our teeth. This allows our kind of mouth to stay with the saliva to stay in our mouth and to stay circulating, so it doesn't dry out when we're doing long periods of meditation. So those are the 7 points of actual posture. They say the legs, the hands, the back, the shoulders, the head, the eyes, and then the mouth. So those are a total of 7 points in the posture. And then sometimes you'll see the additional point of the breathing. So we're going to add that additional point to try to kind of get our mind brought back to a focused point that isn't so distracted from so many outside things. And the breath is a pretty neutral thing that we can focus on, that will kind of get our mind to a more reasonable place that we can then set our motivation. And then from that point, we'll do the opening prayers and then get started with the Bodhicitta teaching. So before we say anything more, in that posture, let's take 3 breaths through our nose, in and out. Bring the breath in the nose and feel it go through the nostrils all the way to the top of the breath, meaning fill your lungs completely, fill your diaphragm completely. And then exhale, feel the air going through the nostrils. And do that a few times and just count as you exhale. And the Kadampa masters say that this is good training for your mind's focus, because the more you do this, you'll find that you can get to higher and higher numbers before your mind gets distracted. Whereas most of us, when we say Om Mani Padme Hum, we say Om, we say the Om, and then we forget what we were saying when we get to the Mani. And we forget what mantra we were doing, or we forget the head of the mantra because we're so distracted. So this allows our mind to kind of be harnessed in a little bit more so that we can then use it for something important. So let's do that breathing. Think about our own suffering. Think about the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the pervasive compounded suffering that we're aware of and understand for ourselves. And then start to think that all those we care for have to experience those same types of suffering. And recognize that all beings, even those we see as our enemies, and those who are completely neutral to us, have been our mothers previously, have been our closest friends, have been our wives and husbands. And we recognize that when we look at what the origin of the suffering of ourselves and other suffering is, it's ultimately the grasping at true establishment and the self-cherishing attitude. Now let's set our motivation that we're here tonight to say the prayers and to listen to the teachings on Bodhicitta in order to lessen our grasping at true establishment and lessen our self-cherishing attitude, because both of those things are the cause of all of our sufferings. And if we're able to get rid of both of those things, will be of most benefit to all sentient beings who have been kind to us in so many ways. So it's for that reason that we should be here, to become Buddhas, because it's only a Buddha who has completely gotten rid of the self-cherishing attitude and completely gotten rid of the grasping at true establishment in a pure, pure way. The only being who has a completely pure continuum is the Buddha. The only being who's completely has omniscience is a Buddha. So the only way we can fulfill our needs and others' needs is by becoming a Buddha. And the only way that we can do that is by accumulating merit, by accumulating wisdom, and going through the process necessary and having patience with the time it will take to go through all those accumulations and those stages that are necessary to become a Buddha. So let's set our motivations that we're here in order to ultimately become Buddhas for the sake of sentient beings. And by doing that, we fulfill our own needs as well. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala jube ne jo damba ne mushe duju ngai dudo jin ruba bola mai bushin si ne son kandro son la sha tse lo aga samara de jana razamara beas. Agasamara Dajanara Zamara Me Deata On Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Buddhiso Baba Ganchasanji Gai Medoji Lobodoji Mebadoji Shiva Doji Dragi Baji Medum Vejudanji Shedin Gorieso Gerin Donja Jeju Jewada Medunu Vejandan Jawada Tumba Jonji Bonzon Zonjoji Daji Dejan Denda Delejo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Gamiradayami Zanye Janana Ye Janam La Jantu Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zanan Ji Jala Benji Zanye Juba Jo Zanye Jadan Ye Janana Chanju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zanan Ji Jala Benji Zanye Juba Jo Zanye Jadan Ye Janam La Chanju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zanan Ji Benji Zanye Juba Jo. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this evening's teaching on Bodhicitta. Very, very big topic. As we saw over the last couple sessions, we've barely even gotten into the outline. And it's because when you really, really look at this topic and understand it in a complete way, it's necessary to understand so many other things. I was speaking with Geshe Aga earlier today, and I was telling him that we've only gotten into the first category of base, and we haven't even moved forward into cause or nature or anything like that. And I was saying it's because once you start to talk about some of the topics within the introductory material, it requires further explanation. It sometimes would be implied within some of these textbooks at Losa Ling, but the learning that is a foundation underneath the material that we're learning is sometimes necessary to expand upon, because the textbook itself assumes the reader understands it already. So there's a lot of information that we have to go over in order to explain the kind of summarized format that we find in the Losa Ling text. Even though it's very extensive, it still requires further commentary just because of the vast nature of these categories. So what is bodhicitta? So we talked about it for a couple of weeks. If we look at the actual word that's used in the text, it's sentient, which is mind generation or awakening mind, generating this mind. And you really have to specify when you're talking about it philosophically, that it's a Mahayana mind generation, if you want to really be specific, because you could say mind generation of a Hinayana practitioner, for instance, would be renunciation, or could be considered renunciation. So if we're really being specific, we say Mahayana mind generation, but really it's the awakening mind. And most of the time when we're speaking of awakening mind or this mind generation, it's speaking about bodhicitta. So it's safe in this category, what we're talking about, to say the word bodhicitta and say that it's the same thing as this Mahayana mind generation. In this case, we can use these words interchangeably. So it's this desire to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. Very simple to say. So we're aiming to become this thing that we read all these magnificent things about, this being that's absolutely incredible. We're aiming to be that being, but for the purpose of others' well-being. So we have this aim, we're targeting at, I want to be a Buddha, but the reason we're doing it, the purpose of it, is to fulfill others' needs. It really is. It's for the sake of others. And we find these 2 points that are made within the definition of this mind that aspires to enlightenment. When we look at the Abhisamalankara and when we look at the definitions, we see it's this desire to become enlightened for the sake of others. So it has these 2 points to it. It's not just wanting to become a Buddha, it's wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of others. So just imagine what kind of mind that is. When we talk about it, you don't want to, have suffering yourself. You think about the different types of suffering. Just imagine what kind of mind it would take to make all of your actions and activities be for everyone. You know, what kind of mind would that be? You know, and when you say just for everyone, you say for everyone's sake. And what does that mean? So that they too can become Buddhas. And we'll learn about what the different types of bodhicitta are, and the categories of, how a bodhisattva would think about that, how an ordinary being would think about, well, how would that occur? How would I be of best aid to, be able to make that occur? How could I work for their sake in the best way? I would have to become a Buddha, because the Buddha is the omniscient being that really knows what all sentient beings need and has these abilities of emanation and these abilities of speech that we just don't have. We're really handicapped by our ordinariness, if you will, when it comes to helping others. We don't have this vast mind that can see things so clearly. So, this bodhicitta is something you arrive at once you've understood the Four Noble Truths, and understood that what suffering is and what its causes are and how you would get out, and that it, could be gotten out of. So you understand that, and then you start to kind of apply that same formula to others in terms of the first truth, and see that they have that suffering, and that they have that origin, and so forth. And somehow or another, right? You go from a place, that has this very ordinary mind that has friends and enemies and neutrals, to a mind that equally wants to benefit all those three types of beings, and equally wants all those three types of beings to be a Buddha, and puts day and night effort into making that happen, making it so that all beings can become a Buddha. And then the bodhisattva recognizes that he or she has to become a Buddha first, really, to be of ultimate benefit. So they start to work tirelessly at that goal. So we'll go through quickly the outline again that we went through last week about bodhicitta. There's 5 categories, and Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. The general meaning of perfection is a commentary on the Abhisama Alamkara, Lord Maitreya's ornament for clear realization. So the general meaning of that, of the perfection of wisdom. And we would say, and what is the Abhisama Alamkara a commentary on? It's a commentary on all of the perfection of wisdom sutras, the 100,000 verse, the 20,000, the 8,000 verse, etc. So, the Abhisama Alamkara is a commentary on all of the perfection of wisdom sutras, the smallest being, right, the Heart Sutra. So this text, the Drepung textbook, is the general meaning of the Abhisama Alamkara, and goes through the various chapters and so forth. But this particular chapter, this particular section goes over the bodhicitta. So we have 5 categories. First, base. Second, cause. Third, nature or definition. Fourth are divisions, and the fifth are benefits. So we went over base last week, physical base anyway. We started a little bit of mental base, but we went over physical base. And what we learned, without going into all of the details, that led us to that conclusion, is that, so when we look at what kind of physical base, hold on one second. I'm just afraid the dogs are playing a little bit. I'm afraid they're going to unplug everything because they've decided this is the best place to, have a playing war. So back to bodhicitta. So we figured out that when it comes to bodhicitta, there were 2 major categories we could come up with. Aspirational bodhicitta, which is when a being first has the real arisal of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. It's called aspirational bodhicitta. And that's when that being's on, in fancy terms, the path of accumulation in terms of the 5 Mahayana paths. So that being's on the Mahayana path of accumulation when he or she generates aspirational bodhicitta. Then there's engaged bodhicitta, And engaged bodhicitta is the bodhicitta which has this aspirational base, but then has the vow, a bodhisattva vow. And what really differentiates, according to Kamalashila, in the stages of meditation, the engaged and aspirational bodhicitta is the presence of the bodhisattva vow. And once a bodhisattva takes a bodhisattva vow, he or she will be an engaged bodhisattva from then on. So they will have engaged bodhicitta from them on. And you look at it in terms of Mahayana paths. If you look at it in terms of path of accumulation, there are 3 levels at the path of accumulation: small, medium, and great. So the smallest level is when you first generate bodhicitta and have aspirational bodhicitta. Once you get to the medium level, you can no longer lose bodhicitta. So you could at that small level, not likely, but you could. But once you get to the medium level and you've taken this bodhisattva vow, you no longer will lose your bodhicitta. So this is the medium stage of the path of accumulation. So this is kind of what differentiates aspirational bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. Aspirational is just the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And then the engaged bodhicitta is the one with the vow. So that first category of base, there's physical base and mental base. So we've learned that for physical base, like what kind of physical base, what could a being have if they wanted to get aspirational bodhicitta? We learned that beings in any among the 6 realms of cyclic existence can get this aspirational bodhicitta. So hell realms, hungry ghost, animals, humans, demigods, and gods, they all have the potential to have this arisal. And we know that Buddha in a previous life had the arisal of bodhicitta in a hell realm. So then we can say if it can arise in a hell, it would likely be able to arise in a hungry ghost and then an animal realm. And then we have stories of nagas in the sutras also generating this mind. And then we know in the human realm and so forth, and the gods and demigods and gods, there is a possibility for this arisal in terms of that. Now, in terms of the physical base that the bodhisattva vow can arise in, the engaged bodhicitta, that's a little bit different. There's a lot of debate about it, but where we actually land is that the higher realms, the humans and gods and so forth, are places where these bodhisattva vows can be taken. Not all higher realms, there's obviously, if they're in a formless realm, how would you get a vow? How would you hear? How would you be able to think about the meaning of a vow and know what those 18 root vows and 46 secondary vows are? So that's questionable, but definitely in the higher gods realms, it speaks of it, and the form, and the desire realm gods in the form realm, it speaks of this generation of the bodhisattva vow. And then in the human realm, we find that the best basis is someone who has the individual liberation vows, or any among the 7 types of individual liberation vows. And if we look within the 7 types of individual liberation vows, the best basis for a bodhisattva vow is a fully ordained person, monk or nun. But that doesn't say that others can't take it, because the texts talk about the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtues as being suitable bases of ethics for receiving a bodhisattva vow. But the best case in the human realm, and according to Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, best case is, any among the 7 types of vows. And best case would be a fully ordained vow. So these are when we look at physical base, these are the 2 categories: physical base of the aspirational bodhicitta, and then physical base of engaged bodhicitta. So then mental base, we get into, this is really speaking for aspirational bodhicitta first. There are 4 different categories. Faith, which has as its focus the conqueror or Buddha. So faith in the Buddha. Compassion focused on sentient beings. Perseverance that's willing to endure, has a willingness to endure what you're going to have to go through as a bodhisattva, right? So, you have to be willing to endure that. And then just a kind of a general kind of faith serves as serves as a mental base. So what I wanted to talk about tonight really is this first category, faith, which is focused on the conqueror, observes the conqueror. Because I think that, that statement takes a lot for granted, right? It assumes that you know who and what the conqueror is. So it's always good to run through our knowledge a little bit when it comes to, things we think we know, or the things that seem very obvious to us. So I wanted to kind of unfold who the Buddha is a little bit tonight. We see him on tankas, right? And then there's statues. And then we, hear that the Buddha knows everything and loves everyone, and just kind of take a lot of things for granted, and take a lot of understanding of what that being is, who that being is, how that being became who or she became. We take a lot of those points just kind of for granted, and just almost like a blind faith that the Buddha never really told us was okay. So I thought tonight it'd be great if we could talk a little bit about, that object that we say so much in our prayers called Buddha. That Dharmakirti established as valid. The Buddha is a valid being. This person exists, established as an omniscient being. Dharmakirti's second chapter of the Pramanavartika Karika. So I have no skill or ability to grapple with Dharmakirti's text, but I wanted to mention it so that maybe you might want to in the future, because really it's amazing. It establishes Buddha, it establishes previous lives, presents the Four Noble Truths in a very, very, very clear way. So I really encourage you all to look at that. But we'll start with this word Sanje, Buddha, right? And in Tibetan Sangye, there's two words going on kind of there put together, translated as awakened one, because the Sang means to wake up and the J means to kind of open, sometimes translated like an opening, a lotus opening. So what has happened here is awoken from ignorance the Buddha has. So when we look at the beginning of Lama Tsongkhapa's Golden Rosary, it gets into the translator's homage, and it gets down to we bow down to the Buddhas. To whom the Buddhas? Who are the Buddhas, right? The Buddhas are Sanje because they have cut the continuum of the sleep of ignorance. So they're woken up from the sleep of ignorance. So they're sung up, they're sung. If we're looking at etymology, they've woken up, they've awakened. And because they have perfect knowledge that has destroyed the state of being tightly squeezed shut, and are open, and an opened awareness to what is be known. So they're omniscient. So they're woken up open. They've woken up omniscient, right? So they've woken up from the sleep of ignorance, omniscient, to know all things, if you will. So that's really what this word Sanje in Tibetan is referring to. And then we look at the 70 verses for going for refuge by Chandrakirti. It says the Buddha being opened is like a lotus, because awareness opens to what is to be known, destroying the ignorant state of being tightly squeezed shut. So that's another way that Sanjay, the etymology, can be looked at. So we have this being now that we say is woken up from the ignorance. What is this ignorance that the Buddha is woken up from? It's this ignorance that grasps at things as being truly established. So the Buddha has woken up from that. And then if we look at, what also the Buddha has gotten rid of are also those imprints of the grasping at true establishment. and the imprints of the afflictions. And he or she does so by practicing this bodhisattva path, by getting rid of the self-cherishing attitude, which is necessary to do if one wants to be omniscient and all-knowing. So what then happens, according to, the teachings? So this being goes through all of these stages. So the being, so let's back it up a little bit. So the Buddha was once ordinary being, just like us, walking around with problems, and family problems, and all these other things that go on in our lives with the has to tend to the animals, tend to work, and had beginningless lives, similar to that in every kind of form, just like we have, right? Buddha was an animal before, just like we were an animal before. Was a hell being before, just like we were a hell being before. And then Buddha, in a life just like ours, started practicing and started engaging in a pathway which made him eventually nothing like us, and nothing like he was. But it was really a pathway, and it was a series of practices that led to this maturity of an individual, not an instantaneous kind of event that just took place out of nowhere. So there was a pathway that this being had to undertake in order to have this kind of evolution of being, to go from someone who's like me, right? And has, all of the attachment and all of the anger, and it's all saturated by ignorance all the time, just all of my movements, to go from a being like that to someone who knows everything, who has no afflictions, who has no suffering, who has love and compassion for friends, enemies, and neutrals, in an immeasurable way, is a big leap. So that leap takes a lot of work. So according to the Buddha, who's teaching us how to do what he did in order to arrive at where he did, right? This is like what I had to do. I did this. And if we read the sutras, it's very interesting. Like there's all storytelling, and, and then when we look at the Indian commentaries, it's, kind of picking apart all of the meanings within the figurative and definitive teachings that the Buddha gave. But you find that there's a series of stages that a practitioner needs to go through in order to change, in order to go from, this perfected state, this state of complete imperfection to a perfected state. And according to the teachings, one would have to go through the understanding of the Four Noble Truths for oneself, and then practice the Mahayana path based on that understanding, and go through the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, and no more learning, to arrive at what is called the Buddha ground. So tonight I'm going to talk about what that is. Not really like how we get to it or anything. Let's talk about the candy tonight. Let's talk about the light at the end of the rainbow. We talk about suffering a lot. We talk about, a lot of work a lot, but let's talk about the light at the end of the rainbow, because it says that we have to know what the light at the end of the rainbow is very, very well, to have faith in it, right? Like, if we want to have faith and want to become something, we really need to know what that is exactly. If in order to completely inspire ourselves. So what is that exactly? So we're going to talk about the bodies of the Buddha tonight, when we break down what is a Buddha. So we know a Buddha is a being that's abandoned all negativities. It's gotten rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. A Buddha is a being who can understand conventional and ultimate truth simultaneously. We can only understand conventional truth, and when we have, a kind of a sign, we can inferentially understand ultimate things, but it really takes a yogic direct perception to understand ultimately the nature of things. But the Buddha can, at the same time, understand conventional and ultimate, and the Buddha's mind, is omniscient, so knows the conventional and ultimate of everything all the time. And then the Buddha has this unique love and compassion for all sentient beings. So you take somebody who wants all sentient beings to be happy and be free from suffering, and then you give them the ability to know the reality and diversity of all phenomena simultaneously, right? That makes them really able and capable, and they're motivated to help, because they have this love and compassion. So what does that look like? What's that being look like? So we call it the bodies of the Buddha, the kayas. I think in Sanskrit, the kayas, they can be divided so many different ways: 1 way, 2 ways, 3 ways, 4 ways, 5 ways. The texts say. This teaching, by the way, is coming out of the same text, Panchen Sonandrapa's General, brought to you by Panchen Sonandrapa's General Meaning of Perfection. The very back of the book, I found the bodies of the Buddha. And I was thinking, like, when I saw this thing about faith in the conqueror, I know we've gone over what, the Buddha's excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities, according to the Lamrim Chenmo many times. And you can look that up in the Lamrim Chenmo, it's right in there. But we really haven't gone, over some of these other things as much. So I thought, why don't we do that? So I started to go back in my notes and remembered that in the Parshin Shitten, there was a beautiful presentation of bodies of the Buddha. So I went to it, and I talked to Aga this morning and went over it. And he said, well, just make sure, sometimes too much information, too difficult isn't always so good. So, just try not to go too difficult. And I think, hung the phone up and assumed that I would go as difficult as I possibly could. But, I told you we were going to get in the weeds and be okay with it a little bit. So I think that we all, if we don't already understand these words, we can aspire to understand them, and at least know that they exist, and know we've received a complete understanding of what, bodhicitta is, and what its aim is, and who a Buddha is, and so forth. So I think it's positive, because we could go a heck of a lot deeper, but I'm not capable of doing so. So we'll go as I told Geshe-la that I would never ever say anything that I wasn't 100% confident in. And the other stuff that we talk about that it sounds like I still have doubts about, it's just for for me to be able to process further. So he liked that answer. So we can say one body of a Buddha. We can say, we'll just name them the Dharmakaya, or truth body. One body. If we say 2 bodies, we could say truth body, form body, the Dharmakaya, Rupakaya. If we say 3 bodies, we can say truth body, enjoyment body, and emanation body. So those are in Sanskrit, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. Okay. And then if we say 4 bodies, this is where my Sanskrit's going to trail off. We say 4 bodies, then we would say the nature Dharmakaya, the exalted wisdom truth body, or Dharmakaya, the enjoyment body, and then the emanation body. And then there's a 5th way to do it, where you say the 2 Dharmakayas, the wisdom Dharmakaya, the natural Dharmakaya, then enjoyment body, and then emanation body. There's an actual emanation body, and then the imputed one, because Bodhisattva is on the 10th ground. It could go in that category, but it's not a tukul. It's not an emanation body. So a lot of information. We're going to go back to 4 categories because that's the way it's presented in the Parshinshita. Okay, so let's talk about the bodies of the Buddha. So the Dharmakaya, we hear this word all of the time. Translated into English, it's truth body. Truth body can be divided into 2 categories. And once you hear these 2 categories and we explain them, you'll understand kind of the Dharmakaya. So the truth body, Dharmakaya, is divided into 2 categories. First, the natural truth body, or natural, we'll just call it, let's use English, natural truth body. And then the exalted wisdom truth body. So the natural truth body, we can just say is the emptiness, right? Emptiness of the Buddha's mind. The lack of true establishment of the Buddha's mind. And then we can say that the, hold on one second. Hold on one second. I just want to make sure of one thing real quick. Okay. So let me just reverse that and make sure that I said it properly. So the 2 bodies of the Dharmakaya are the natural and the wisdom body. The natural body is divided into 2 categories. The lack of true establishment of the Buddha's mind, and then the purity of the adventitious. So the cessation of suffering, we can say. So emptiness and cessation would be the natural Dharmakaya, natural truth body. And then the wisdom truth body, so there's natural truth body and wisdom truth body. Natural truth body, the emptiness and cessation. The wisdom truth body falls, are the categories of omniscience and so forth. When we say wisdom truth body, it can be divided into various categories. We can say omniscience if we want to summarize it, or we could say, if we wanted to do it in the Parshinshita, it says that you can do it in the large way if you want to look at it in 21 categories. And those 21 categories actually fall down into, they make up for 146 categories altogether. So if we look at it in terms of omniscience, we can break it down into those different categories. And then you can also say the 5 stainless wisdoms or omniscience. So you can have 21 categories, you can have the 5 stainless wisdoms, or you can have omniscience. So the omniscience of the Buddha's mind, basically, is the wisdom truth body. So the natural truth body is the cessation of suffering that the Buddha has, the 4th noble truth, that cessation of suffering and the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, right? And then the wisdom truth body is the omniscience that the Buddha has. Okay, so the wisdom the Buddha has is that. Okay, so that's the Dharmakaya. That's how you would break down the Dharmakaya into 2 categories. You would look at it in terms of the natural Dharmakaya and the wisdom Dharmakaya. So Yeah, I think that covers that. So then the next category we have is the enjoyment body. So there isn't any form whatsoever in the Dharmakaya. So when we look at, the breakdown of the truth body and then the form bodies, everything from here on out is considered a form body. So the enjoyment body is the Sambhogakaya. So this is characterized by various things. And the enjoyment body has some specificity with it. So the enjoyment body is the Buddha's abiding in a pure land with all of the marks and so forth. So I think it's easier just to kind of show the characteristics of this enjoyment body, and that'll kind of explain where the enjoyment body is and what it's like. So first of all, there's 5 definite characteristics that the enjoyment body possesses. First, the enjoyment body abides only in a highest pure land. It's never abiding in other places. The enjoyment body's emanations can go places, but the actual enjoyment body stays in a pure land. So who's there? Who are the definite retinue? So we would say is always surrounded by Arya Bodhisattvas, those Bodhisattvas who've seen emptiness. So the enjoyment body is surrounded by beings who are Bodhisattvas that have seen emptiness. There's no ordinary beings there. There's no hearers. There's no solitary realizers. None of these beings can perceive. We can't perceive an enjoyment body if we are ordinary. If we are like we seem, like I can't perceive, I don't know who you all are. I can only speak from my own mind. You may all be Buddhists already, but I can't perceive an enjoyment body because I'm an ordinary being. But the enjoyment body is perceived by Arya Bodhisattvas in this pure land. So what is definite about the Dharma they teach? So the Dharma they teach is always the Mahayana Dharma. It's never the lower vehicle Dharma. It's never Dharma that would teach someone how to get out of cyclic existence for themselves alone. It would only be Dharma that was taught to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone. So the teachings that are being taught are only those that are for the sake of all sentient beings. The body, there's a definite body that this being possesses. It possesses the 32 major marks and 80 minor marks of a perfect being. So Buddhas have, and we can go over them sometime what the marks are. If anyone is interested, we can read through them. We find them in the Abhisama Alamkara, the 32 major marks, the 80 minor marks. It's not even that long. I may even just read it. And then definite time is that the enjoyment body abides without showing the aspects of birth and death until cyclic existence has been emptied. So how long will this enjoyment body be there, right? Well, until there's no sentient beings, until, so what's the line of demarcation between sentient being and Buddha? It's the 10th Bodhisattva ground. So once, everyone's crossed that, then there's no more Sambhogakaya, according to this, no more enjoyment body. So again, we'll go backwards. So we've gone over, there's a Dharmakaya, which is called the truth body. There's a natural Dharmakaya. This is the cessation of suffering in the Buddha's mind, basically the freedom from the adventitious, the freedom from impurity, purity, if you will, freedom from defilement. And the emptiness of that, the lack of true establishment of that, of the Buddha's mind. Then there's the wisdom that the Buddha has. The Buddha's omniscient and has, love and compassion for all sentient beings because of the Bodhisattva path that he or she practiced, where they generated love and compassion a desire to become a Buddha for everyone. That left stains in that being's mind that makes it so the Buddha has to spontaneously help everyone. The Buddha doesn't have a choice, like it's not like the Buddha wakes up one morning and says, I'm tired. The Buddha has perfected effort. The Buddha is perfection of wisdom, and the Buddha is perfect compassion, perfect love. It's immeasurable, doesn't leave anyone out, and doesn't stop working until everybody's free. And that's a humongous job, right? Like that's the job description, by the way, that we're like applying for right now. It's like, I'm not going to stop working. We say like, man, when I can retire. Well, the job description we're signing up for is to never stop working, no matter how hard it is, until the last being crosses the line, from the 10th Bodhisattva ground of being a sentient being to being a Buddha. That's how long we're gonna work once we get the job we're applying for a Buddha. But it won't be work. It's joyous, right? It's joyous perseverance, and that's what we learn as we develop more and more. First facsimiles of love and compassion, right? And then actually real love and compassion. And when that becomes more and more and more, the joy that kind of drives everything is just makes it effortless for the Bodhisattva. And that's why the Bodhisattva, can gladly give anything away, give an eye away, because he or she is just so invested on this path for others, that others' needs are so clearly in front of their own, because they know that the self-cherishing attitude is like a chronic disease that causes all suffering. Everything bad that befalls anyone has always been caused by the chronic disease of self-cherishing, says in the Guru Puja, right? And in Shantideva's text, it says that, all horrible things in the world come from self-cherishing. All wonderful things come from cherishing others. The Buddhas, Bodhisattvas cherish others. We, ordinary beings, cherish themselves. Look at the difference here, and look at the difference in the happiness, and look at a being who's free from suffering or finding joy in everything they do. A Buddha is completely free from suffering, and at least a Bodhisattva is finding joy even when he or she is suffering. That's a far cry from where I am. So wonderful to be able to start to end up in this place where we could become this kind of being, that has all of these qualities, so of omniscience and loving and compassion for all beings, and then so Bodhisattva Aryas are sentient beings. So the Buddha's mind, right, that has love and compassion for all beings. And has all of these abilities, creates a form of a being in an enjoyment body, because Bodhisattva superiors need a teacher. They need to be led out of suffering. So the Buddha's sole aim for everything that he or she does is to lead beings out of suffering. The Bodhisattva Aryas are still in cyclic existence, if you will, right? So the Buddha is emanating a body with its 32 marks, major marks, and 80 minor marks, and fully presenting the Buddha's body to those beings in order to help them on their path. And then simultaneously, other bodies are created. So we have this Buddha who's got a no form truth body that has no more suffering. That's just an aspect of it. It's free from, that's pure, and that has a cessation of suffering, has freedom from defilements, and is empty of true establishment. This being knows everything and loves everyone equally. So then manifests a body called the enjoyment body to help certain kinds of beings that are called bodhisattva superiors, bodhisattvas who've seen emptiness directly, and then manifests what's called the emanation body in order to help everyone else. And then the emanation body, they say, is in, a few different forms. The emanation body appears as an artisan at times, or one second. I'm gonna look in the text just to make sure. Yeah. Yes. So as an artisan, a birth emanation, or a supreme emanation body. So those three categories. So Buddha may manifest as an artisan, an artist, or a craftsman, or a musician, in order to somehow free sentient beings from suffering. So Buddha can emanate as all these different types of makers, it's called, literally. I think in the Parshin Shuddha, it says a maker, a zua, makers of music, makers of art, makers of houses, and so forth. So Buddha emanates as that. Then there's a birth emanation, it's called. And this is where the Buddha takes on forms, other forms, such as birds or animals, in order to help beings. So the Buddha can take on all these different forms in order to benefit others. And then the supreme emanation body talks about Buddha's emanating as a Buddha in our world, like Shakyamuni did, and where he displayed the 12 deeds of a Buddha. So here, this is the third kind. So the Buddha, Shakyamuni, and according to the Mahayana tradition, was an emanation. In the other traditions, Buddha's enlightenment was under the Bodhi tree, and that was an actual story where the Buddha achieved all of those realizations during that life story, and then achieved his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. But according to the Mahayana, Buddha Shakyamuni was already enlightened and was merely an emanation, and was this kind of an emanation, a supreme emanation. Yes, the dogs are really enjoying themselves tonight. They're just having some fun. Everyone knows Suma. Suma's back in the show. So Shakyamuni Buddha was like a supreme emanation. This would be that category. So according to Mahayana, Shakyamuni Buddha was already a Buddha and was just emanating a body in order to help sentient beings. And that would infer that there was an enjoyment body already also that was occurring, and a truth body, right? Because the Buddhas have a truth body, emanation, enjoyment body, and an emanation body. And then the truth body has two categories, right? The natural truth body, the wisdom truth body, the enjoyment body, and then the emanation body. So those are the four different categories of the Buddha, bodies of a Buddha. So wow, right? Amazing kind of being who can abide in this state of, omniscience, and can abide in a state of an enjoyment body with all these wonderful signs and 32 major marks and 80 minor marks. And then in order to help beings who are like super high level beings who, who can go to places we can't see as ordinary beings. So those super high level beings that can go to places that we can't see, go get teachings from a Buddha in a pure form. And the Buddha does that to help them to become Buddhas. Even though they're super, highly realized beings already, they still need the Buddha's help to become enlightened. So the Buddha emanates in order, because the Buddha has this equal love. The Buddha understands, that the Bodhisattva on these high grounds needs his help, just like a bug, and has love and compassion that's immeasurable for that Bodhisattva that has had faith and has taken refuge in the Buddha, and has maybe like the Buddha's like pictures on their wall and posters up, and all of these things that the Bodhisattvas are making these offerings day and night to the Buddhas. But the Buddhas don't, have kind of a swaying for one being or another, even though some of these beings are just focused day and night on how great the Buddha is. The Buddha has an equal desire to benefit everyone. It doesn't, sees it as wonderful that these Bodhisattvas are making offering, and wonderful that these Bodhisattvas wish to become him or her, but doesn't then help them anymore, right? So in ordinary people like me, somebody, really likes you and wants to give you things, and, kind of fawns all over you, you're more apt to kind of want to help that person than someone who just yelled at you. But the Buddha doesn't see any difference. The Buddha sees an equality. The Buddha realizes that everybody's just reacting based on their karma, and that there is no inherently existent bad person. There is no inherently existent angry person. There is no true friend or true enemy, or we could say true friend. You could say that, but you get what I'm saying. That all of these things are just kind of mental constructs based on our experience. Based on someone else has karma to be in our vicinity. We have karma to have them in our vicinity. And now all bets are off. Did we do something good in the past to create the next part? Or did we do something bad in the past to create the next part? And when I say the past, we're speaking of Buddhism, we have beginningless lives. So not in this life, meaning past lives in the past. So, whatever karma is going to catch up with us, two people meet, somewhere in life in a situation, and whatever karma is going to catch up with those two people is the one that's going to shape that whole interaction. What karma is going to show up and manifest in my life is going to shape my experience of how the person's treating me, and how the person treats me is going to be a manifestation of their karma rising. And if they yell at me, or if they say nice things to me, they couldn't have said anything else other than what they said. And I couldn't have heard anything else other than what I heard. And if I heard something nice, it was because previously I did something virtuous, and that karma now is connected to an experience of hearing something nice. If I hear something terrible, it's just karma coming to fruition because I did something terrible. And now it's turning into somebody's saying something bad to me. And I'm blaming them for my happiness or my suffering response. I think that it's, I'm blaming them, like, oh, well, yeah, see, they're making me happy. When really it was just a previous action manifesting into an experience. And they're under this kind of same control that I'm under, and in terms of their activity that they're doing. If they're going to say something pleasant, then it's concordant to something virtuous or pleasant that they said before. All of these actions and reactions, them seeing me as someone to yell at, as seeing an enemy in front of them, is because of some non-virtue they created before. they wouldn't run into somebody that rubbed them the wrong way they wanted to yell at. If they hadn't created the situation for them to kind of have an enemy or an adversary. So there's this huge kind of play going on, right? Where this person's like a puppet in control, under control of previous karma. And I'm under control of my previous karma. We both think it is all happening from its own side. My experience, I think, is really real, and I cling to it as, having some inherent existence. And their experience is the same way. And in dependence upon both of our karmas, dependently originating, they're behaving, my being on the receiving end, and then my reacting back. This whole thing's going on. So it's in dependence upon all of the, this dependent origination of, their previous karma coming into fruition of action, my previous karma coming into fruition of experience, and then reaction, and then a big circle and cycle that we hold as being so concrete, and we're so sure that there's something solid externally telling us we're great or telling us we're terrible, but it's merely a collection of words and sounds that are coming out of someone's mouth, that are being forced upon them by their karma, that we're then hearing in our ear consciousness. And then our ear consciousness is, understanding them slightly. And then our mental consciousness labels them. And then we call them nice words, and we call them awful words, but there's this whole process of labeling that's taken place in dependence upon this collection that's serving as the basis of designation as whatever we're naming it is pleasant or unpleasant, based on, whether we see it attractive or something adversarial. So it's important to see that when we have these experiences, that we're recognizing that they are occurring in the way that they are occurring, and then they couldn't possibly occur the way that we think they occur. So anyway, not to get too far off on that. So I just want to go over just a quick summary again of the bodies of the Buddha, and then maybe we'll do a little bit of question and answer after I just give the summary and just a closing statement. So in summary, when we look at why did we get into this in the first place? We got into this because when we look at bodhicitta, according to this text, the first category is the kind of base that you could get bodhicitta in. And there's a physical base and a mental base. And when we got to mental base, the first thing it said we needed to have is faith which observes or is focused on the conqueror or on the Buddha. So I posed the question, who is the conqueror? Who is the Buddha? What is the conqueror conquered? The conqueror, we learned, conquered ignorance. The conqueror has awakened from the sleep of ignorance and has blossomed and opened into omniscience, if you will, Sanjay. So we learned that's who a Buddha is. And then we started to look at what the categories of a Sanjay are. Someone who is awoken and opened. And we saw that there are many ways that we can categorize them, by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5. But we looked at Panchen Sonandrapa's points of how we would do it by 4. And we saw that there is a natural truth body, an exalted wisdom truth body, an enjoyment body, and an emanation body. It's neat to start to look at what all those bodies do and can do, and understand, what omniscience would mean. To start planting the seeds for the potential of it to occur. As the bodhisattvas get closer and closer to these realities, it becomes more and more kind of tangible and more real to them. They've experienced Buddha realms and, Buddha lands already, once they've started to have these higher realizations. But the way that they got to that point was by learning about all of these things, by learning, what it would look like or be like to be a being. And then they started to act like they were that being until they became that being. So that's what's so important about us. There's all these categories and all this difficult material and who is a Buddha and what is a Buddha and why is a Buddha. But if we really don't know the answer to that question, what are we studying? What are we going refuge? Who are we going for refuge to? Just this concept of a really great person who loves everyone. What does that mean? What differentiates that really great person who loves everyone from many, many really great people who love everyone? There's, and what does everyone mean? What does that mean? So when we start to look at what all sentient beings mean, and we start to realize that according to Buddha, our little minds can't even come up with a number to know how many of those there are. Like we say immeasurable, but that's kind of I don't really like that word, because the Buddha, it's measurable. It is. The Buddha can count how many sentient beings there are. We just can't, so we say it's immeasurable in our little world system, but the Buddha can count them. So we're trying to help that amount of beings, so it's a big job, and it's going to take a big kind of person with big kind of plans and big kind of ideas to become the greatest being there is. What's the difference between a Buddhist and a non-Buddhist teacher? Why do we go for refuge to the Buddha as opposed to a non-Buddhist teacher? And I think that we have to start to understand who the Buddha is and, how the Buddha gets to where he or she has gotten to in order to really believe there's such a being, establish there's such a being, have real faith, have the kind of faith that makes us want to push forward and do these practices that aren't very easy all the time. So I hope that, that this has just opened up a little bit of a door into, what this Sanjay, this awakened one is, and how many bodies and potentials that being has. I think that's really neat too, to know that this being has all these potentials of emanation, and the Buddha's body and speech and mind have all of these like innumerable just incredible amounts of qualities. Yes. So just so everyone knows, Buddha's Center.com is pretty running right now. If you go on the internet to buddhascenter.com, you can click and it'll link to teachings now and go to there. And it links also to our YouTube channel, Buddha's Center. Believe it or not, these were all open. YouTube channel, Buddha's Center, no apostrophe, just Buddha's Center. You'll see the icon of white Tara, and there's 3 teachings already uploaded there. The last Bodhicitta teaching, the last teaching at the Chenrezig Center, where I went through like a lot of stuff, all compact into one big breath. And then the first, and then we gave we did the prayer of noble conduct together on Monday on We Suck. And there was a little talk on the meaning of the prayer of noble conduct and the sutra it's from, etc. So that's up also. Those are up and running. Please, we're trying to get everybody's emails together. I realize I've been text messaging everyone. We will eventually just be emailing everyone. We have most of your emails, so that's pretty much going to be the process. Like an hour before the teaching, we were still like uploading and, making things happen. So we're just trying to make it very simple and organic from the beginning, like making it a platform to be able to have the teachings, on Thursdays and Sundays. and a platform in which I can record those teachings and put them on YouTube. And then a platform that we can, meet as a community and then discuss and eventually have a calendar of events where we can in person have get-togethers. So we'll build on that. We'd like to have a get-together in June. I think an email went out about it to some folks, for some suggestions. We don't need to get into suggestions on this Zoom room, but just to put it out there that that's what we're doing. So that's the kind of course of action moving forward with intention. I'm really, really excited to be able to discuss Panchen Sonandrapa's text with you all. And I just want to make sure that we get it exactly right, and that, moving forward, we just continue to try to understand it in the best way that we can. And Sundays we will continue at 10, but the link will be this link, not the other link. Yeah, and so I can send something out to that effect moving forward also. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted by the dogs right now. I apologize. So we can send that link out in the future. Yes, Dan, go ahead.
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for tonight's teaching. It was very helpful to me. And one of the things that I was very curious about was understanding the definition of a Buddha's omniscience, because I have different ideas about it, and I've seen different descriptions in the teachings. One is that I've seen that the Buddha's omniscience is such that if a Buddha wanted to have awareness of a particular form in all of reality and anywhere in the universe, he or she could focus on it, and then suddenly it would appear to his or her mind, and then they could also travel there instantaneously or whatever, things like that. But that the omniscience was not necessarily that they were seeing and knowing all things simultaneously. The other end is that they do see and know all things simultaneously. So on the one hand, they can know you and I right now in this conversation, but simultaneously could also be knowing aliens 3.9 billion light years away, and that they're also going over the Dharma in some other way, and they could know those beings simultaneously, and they would know all things in a very transcendent, usual way, that they would somehow have all information in the universe be simultaneous with his or her mind, and that their actions would be in accordance with this very different state of being. So I'd be really fascinated to see what you have to say about that. Thank you.
Yeah. So the omniscience of the Buddha's mind, really, it just gets into that the Buddha knows reality and diversity simultaneously. Really, that's what the definition when we look at the qualities of the Buddha's mind is: knowing reality and diversity simultaneously, meaning knowing conventional and ultimate truth. So the conventional and ultimate truth of all phenomena. Now, that's a great question. Does the Buddha need to turn his or her focus, right, to an object of observation? Now, we know if that is the case, the Buddha doesn't have to limit that to one object. So the Buddha can simultaneously, if he or she wants to focus, know all objects of observation. So I guess the question is there a choice, right? Is there something that the Buddha is, focusing specifically on? And I would say that, I don't have an exact answer for that. I can't give you in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara quote, I can investigate that for you for next time. I would think that because the Buddha has as an object of observation all sentient beings, love and compassion, that all sentient beings are simultaneously being apprehended. Because if the Buddha is wanting to help all sentient beings, then he's simultaneously apprehending them. And then the way that the Buddha apprehends them is by looking into their continuum and knowing what the predispositions are and what they'll give rise to. So the Buddha can see through their eyes and know the environment that they're in, just like he knew the environment they were in previously and in the future. So that's a great question. That's my answer to that question. It raises a doubt in my mind if they need to focus. It would feel like there wouldn't be this spontaneity. Now what happens? It's a great question, right? When there are no more sentient beings, right? What is the Buddha, right? Samsara is empty. So I just gave a reasoning that would say, okay, the Buddha's focused on sentient beings, and the sentient beings, when we look at what samsara is, it's sentient beings, inhabitants, and where they inhabit, sentient, and the beings in the place they inhabit, right? So when we look at what is phenomena, right, samsara and nirvana, the aspects of samsara and nirvana. So it would follow, say samsara is emptied and there's no more samsara, then there's no more that to know. It's non-existent at that point. Mm-hmm. So then the Buddha's focus would be everything that there is to know. So my in short, I would say that there's this simultaneous understanding, but because it says understanding all phenomena, the reality and diversity of all phenomena in a moment. That's pretty clear that's simultaneous, I would think. But if I'm wrong, this is my reasoning it out, looking at all these definitions and things from my past. But that's a great question. I think I've seen the answer to it before also, but I want to be direct about it.
So then my understanding would be that the Buddha's mind is not like our minds in which that we focus on particulars, but rather their mind is almost like simultaneous with all phenomena, and that they're almost like the sun. Like they have a radiance of mind that is with all things, or is with all existence in all directions. And this simultaneity of knowing and being of all existence is their primary existence, which might be accurate to say that is their Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya is that their being in truth, which is all things. But then they also have this appearance as though they're focusing, because they give teachings and they abide with sentient beings and emanations. So they also have this appearance as though they're focusing. But I believe in your case, what you've been saying, if they do have the simultaneity, then it's merely for our sake that they appear as if they are focusing, or if that they are focusing, it's out of love and it's not out of a lack of understanding.
I would say you could say their focus is infinite.
Yes. I appreciate that. Thank you.
But that just their focus is just that part of the truth body that's focusing or thinking, the omniscience.
Right. Yeah.
The 20, the either 146 aspects of knowledge that is omniscience, or the 21, or the 5 stainless, the 5 mirror-like wisdoms, not stainless, called mirror-like wisdoms, or omniscience. Those are the different categories. Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Priscilla, did you have your hand up? Anyone else? Okay, so I know that was a lot of information, but I appreciate you all kind of hanging on and hanging in there to hear it. And like I said, in the future, we'll kind of go over it again and go over it slowly, and be able to address more questions. And then on Sunday, we'll see you for the Lam Rim teaching. Sunday at 10 on this same Zoom link. It'll always be the same Zoom link. Everything we ever do will be on the same Zoom link. And yeah. All right, so We'll do the concluding mandala offering, dedication prayer, Samantabhadra dedication, long life prayer for His Holiness, and then I'll just say an aspiration for Rinpoche until we have something formal. And just as I said last teaching, when we do these mandala offerings, we're imagining we're offering a pure universe, a pure world. This is the way, the hand gesture we do it in. It's imagining this perfect world and a universe as it's described in the Abhidharma with Mount Meru and north, south, east, and west continents. So whether or not the universe scientifically exactly looks like that, we're just imagining that this hand gesture right here is offering the whole entire, universe that's been perfected in the beginning. We're doing it as a request for teaching. So we're making this offering of this perfect universe to the teacher and the lineage all the way back to the Buddha. So when we're making this offering of a pure land, we're making it to the teacher who's sitting in front of us, but it's to the lineage, to the Buddha. Because any one of us talking about Buddhism heard it from our teacher. If it's right Buddhism, right? Unless someone's like a self-realized person or something, I don't know. But the Buddhism that I study, you usually need to hear from someone who heard from someone who heard from someone who heard from someone. So we're making this mandala offering to that lineage, to the person who heard it from someone who heard it from someone who heard it from someone all the way back to Lord Buddha. If it's a pure lineage, you will land at Lord Buddha from your teacher. So you're making this offering of saying, please, may I have this teaching that goes all the way back to Lord Buddha as a sign of respect. And at the end of the teaching, it's called a Thanksgiving mandala offering. You're saying, thank you. Here's a perfect universe. The greatest thing I could think of, to offer is a perfect universe. So here's a perfect universe for saying, hey, thanks to the lineage, to the teacher all the way back to the lineage for giving me this instruction. So that's the reason for the mandala offering before. It's for requesting a teaching, and then a mandala offering at the end. It's called a Thanksgiving mandala offering. It's for saying, hey, thanks for the teaching, or in Hitchhikers, thanks for all the fish, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So anyway, that's the reasoning behind the mandala offering. And the dedication prayer is for the purpose of making sure that all of this good stuff that we heard, hopefully we heard it properly. We heard it, without coming in with prejudices and listening to it in a funny way. And we didn't come into it like with our ears closed, and we didn't come into it in such a way where we're distracted and we're forgetting everything. Hopefully if we, came in here and listened right, and we're able to get some of this teaching, we have some wisdom that's arisen from hearing. So if we have this wisdom arisen from hearing, and we've done this virtuous thing by listening to a teaching, it's important that we dedicate it to a specific purpose, because any virtue that we do could just turn into like happiness and like samsaric happiness, right? It's just like an ice cream cone. Like, but wait, I wanted Buddhahood. I wanted this to be a cause for Buddhahood. Well, it turned into an ice cream cone because you didn't direct the virtue at Buddhahood, according to Buddha. The Buddha said that all of the things that we do are really based on intention. And if our intention is that we're doing this for the sake of becoming a Buddha, and then we dedicate it for the sake of becoming a Buddha, it's almost like we make it solid, that it becomes a cause for that Buddhahood. The Buddha said that like a drop of water in the ocean that isn't extinguished until the whole ocean is extinguished, likewise, a virtue that is dedicated to becoming a Buddha doesn't get extinguished until it carries out what it becomes a cause for, until that enlightenment occurs that it causes, if you will. So a properly dedicated virtue to becoming a Buddha becomes a direct cause for Buddhahood, becomes a cause for enlightenment, according to this way of thinking. It's like putting a stamp in our mind that, hey, we did this to become a Buddha, and it leaves this kind of resonance. It leaves this predisposition in our mind that becomes a potential existence that then ripens into a person eventually. And that imprint that we leave will be dedicated to ripening into Buddhahood, if you will. Maybe, not so direct, like, obviously all has to, be like graduated stages, but everything is cause and effect, no matter what it is. When we look at sequential cause and effect, when we look at realization, practice, and Buddhahood, the achievement of Buddhahood. So we'll put this perfect universe together. Imagine maybe what that could be like. It says here, it's strewn with flowers and incense. And when you look at the description of it, imagine the ground is as soft as lapis lazuli. And, just imagine just everything's perfect. Just imagine this perfect place. There's no suffering. There's no pollution. There's no, none of these terrible wars. None of this is this perfect universe that you're just offering. And then with that motivation, the fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Ozandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray that we meet quickly with Kensur Geshe Wandak in all of our lives. Meet with him, whatever his name is, whatever he chooses to emanate to us to help us. May we meet with him in order to become Buddhas as quickly as possible. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it as usual. Have a great night. Yeah, I can't do that. Can't have that up on the internet. So I don't know what you do about that. I can't have like the dogs fighting. That doesn't seem good. Seems bad.